Hello, my name is Emily from Crochet Creations. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to do a little crochet with me, chit chat type of video just to do something a little different and see if you guys like this. Georgia taking a nap and I have the monitor on. I'm not so sure that she's napping right now, so we shall see how long this video lasts. But I thought it would be a good chance to sit down and to work on a project that I really need to work on. If you've been watching my channel, you see me working on this little bolero. It's a custom order. I made it. It was beautiful, super cute, and then it was too big for my client, so I had to go back and fix it, and it's just been a long project. I'm ready to be done with custom orders. I'm over it, so I need to finish it. So I figured I would just work on this a little bit and we can just sit and chat. You can pull out your crochet or your knitting, or when I like to watch videos like this, sometimes I'm folding laundry or doing other chores like dishes, whatnot. So feel free to keep yourself busy however as you listen along. Also, airplanes in the background. I hear her saying mama. Hold please. Okay, so we are back. Hopefully my toddler will nap a little bit. I'm just gonna be crocheting away on this using loops and threads wool-like in the color beige. And I'm just using, this is a prim crochet hook. Kind of neat. They don't offer them very often here in the US. I like it. It's a plastic hook, but I do really like how the handle is ergonomic. They're not very expensive at all. I definitely want to try more hooks by them. That's what I'm doing. I'm on the second sleeve now. So I've got all my decreases marked, and it's actually looking a lot better. It fits me, so I can try it on and kind of see how I like it. So I hope that my client enjoys it too. Perfect world, I'd have this done for Saturday. I'm not sure if that's the case. Today's Wednesday, but we'll see how far we get. So today I wanted to talk about just crochet and knitting in general, comparing the two crafts a little bit. I've been crocheting since I was 9 years old. I learned when I was at like a girls activity thing that my church had, like every other week or something. You'd have a little evening class just for fun for girls my age. So we would do all sorts of fun things, play games, do crafts, whatnot. Anyway, I learned how to crochet from one of the older ladies in my church through that class. And I've been crocheting ever since. And I'd done small things like scarves and even like belts and things. I didn't delve into it too much, just kind of played around. And it wasn't until I was in college and I had people to crochet for that I started learning new skills and realizing that I could do so much more with my craft than I previously thought. So I started doing amigurumi and realizing I could make garments and things, and my love and honestly my obsession for crochet blew up at that time. I started even selling some products when I was at the very end of my time in college. It's been a few years now and I have a family. I'm trying to phase out of selling products, but I've got patterns and things. So my crochet journey has been long and very garbled, I would say. It's been kind of all over the place, kind of tried everything. As far as knitting goes, I wanted to learn how to knit for a little bit. I was completely content with crochet for a while, but I wanted to learn how to knit because I wanted to knit socks. I thought hand knit socks were just the coolest thing, but it took me years after I decided I wanted to learn to knit to actually learn how to knit. I learned about a year ago, actually, about April, May 2021, and it's been quite the journey. I now have a knitted pattern out for a sock. I have knit multiple garments, pattern tested for half a dozen or so designers. I have knit at this point, I've knit over 24 pairs of socks, which is really neat. I've done a lot. It's been amazing to see how my maker journey has grown because of knitting and learning how to knit and broadening what I can do with yarn. So that's been really neat. But I get asked a lot, and I feel like this is a question that's asked a lot, which is easier? Which do you prefer, knitting or crochet? And okay, short answer is I think right now I prefer knitting, but I think that's just because it's the brand new thing and I'm still figuring out all sorts of things, and there's all sorts of patterns that I've had my eye on that I wanted to make if I could knit, and now I can knit, and so now I can make them. And so I think I prefer knitting now just in the moment because there's just so much that I want to make. But that's a different answer than, you know, the broader question, you know, crochet versus knitting. I think that that would be something interesting to talk about, and I would love any and all of your comments down below. These are all just my opinions. They're not necessarily right, but I thought it would be fun to chat and to share about my thoughts related to this debate and this topic, and I would love to hear from you too, because I think there's a lot to be said because there's so much involved in either craft. But I was kind of thinking about this and trying to narrow down my thoughts, and I think there are like 3 big categories and questions to think about when comparing crochet and knitting, at least for me, especially if, you know, someone's asking me what I think would be an easier craft to do. I think the first and foremost, lots of people who ask are beginners, or they want to learn and they're wanting to know what is easier to learn, crochet or knitting. And so thinking about that, having learned both, I think that my familiarity with crochet helped me learn knitting, and I guess be comfortable with the learning process of doing a fiber art, learning how to read patterns, learning abbreviations, learning how to watch stitch tutorials and pick up on those movements quicker than someone who's never watched something like that. So I think that that helped me. It's hard to say. I think I would say that for a beginner, for someone who's learning, I think I still would say that crochet is easier. The thing with crochet is that you only have one loop on your hook, usually at a time. You're in one spot. You're just figuring out, where do I put this next stitch? And so I think it's a lot easier to not get overwhelmed by where everything is going because you're just focused on one stitch, one movement at a time. And in a way, knitting's like that too, but I think crochet is a little bit easier to visualize. So that's kind of my thought, is that it's easier to learn. I was able to learn when I was 9. And I definitely wasn't perfect, but I didn't have any issues that were detrimental. Another part to that question would be, what's easier to fix or to frog? I think knitting is a little bit more precarious with dropping stitches, either while you're knitting them or on the ends of your needles. I think it's easier to accidentally twist things around, and even the issues that are easy to fix can be very detrimental to your final product. So if you try to make a hat and then you drop a stitch, your whole thing could unravel. Whereas with crochet, if you miss a stitch, it's not a big deal. So I think that as a beginner, it's easier to crochet because your issues or troubles, or, you know, the things you might have to figure out as you become more proficient, all the issues along the way as a beginner are not going to impede your ability to make the item. So I think that's what I would say. Crochet versus knitting, I think crochet is easier. And then I guess moving back to the fixing things or frogging or making mistakes. This is a tough question to answer because I just said for a beginner, I think crochet is easier because you can keep moving on past mistakes. Your mistakes aren't going to ruin your project like they would in knitting. But I think I would say that knitting is, so you can hear the airplanes. We're really close to an airfield. I think I would say that knitting is easier as far as mistakes go. And granted, you need to learn how to fix your mistakes. And that can be like a whole new thing, and that can be kind of tricky. But when you know how to fix your mistakes, they're honestly fairly simple mistakes. You purl instead of knit, or you twist your knit stitch, or even you drop a stitch. It's a fairly simple solution. You can notice a drop stitch 20 rows below, and you can drop your needles down to fix it and like bring it back up to where you're working. So that's actually really, really neat that you can do that. And they're not hard fixes when you know how to do the fixes. So I think that knitting is easier to fix. As far as, because for crochet, you'd have to unravel every single stitch you've created since that mistake, since that missed stitch, or since you put the wrong stitch in. And, you know, sometimes you just forget about it, and that's fine. Sometimes you can, like, say you missed a stitch, you can do like a double crochet to like cover the distance vertically, so you can get back to the right number of stitches, or, you know, you can do fixes. But I think that it's a little bit more like hodgepodge, and you can't actually go back and fix that specific issue unless you unravel everything after that issue. Whereas knitting, you can just drop down and fix whatever it is. I think that's really neat. It makes it a lot easier to fix mistakes along the way. As far as frogging goes, and if you don't know what frogging is, it's just ripping back, ripping back from the work that you've done. Knitting still makes me really stressed out about being able to catch my stitches that are live. And so I always use a lifeline if I know how far I'm going to rip back, even if it's just a couple rows. So I think crochet is easier in that sense of frogging, that you're literally ripping out one stitch at a time, and so it's really easy to just stop where you need to go. You can even put just one stitch marker in along the right loop to catch your stitch and prevent it from getting pulled through. So you can just rip, and then your stitch marker will stop you. So like a lifeline, but it's only one stitch marker rather than threading a lifeline through all your stitches the correct way. So that's really nice. Even in like crochet lace, it's the same thing, whereas in knit lace, it's really hard to put a lifeline in after the fact to catch all your stitches the right way and all your yarn overs and whatnot in the right orientation. So what is that? For fixing an individual mistake, I think knitting is easier, but for frogging, I think crochet is a lot easier and safer, less stressful to do. Frogging is never fun, but I would much rather frog and redo something that I know I can fix, so that I'm left with a finished product that I like a lot better. And so it's worth it in either case to frog, but I think it's a little trickier in knitting to make sure you do it right. And to then pick up all your stitches back up again can be tricky without a lifeline. With a lifeline, it can be a pain in the butt. You know, it's not my favorite thing to frog knitting, but frog and crochet is not a big deal. And then I guess the last thing I was thinking about when comparing crochet and knitting as crafts was the wear. Like, how easy are they to wear? I think stylistically, while there are some crochet designs that are similar to knit designs stylistically, I think overall a lot of crochet is more boho, kitschy, more eclectic. So it's a different style. And I'm realizing that that's not my style as much. I do love me a good granny square, don't get me wrong. But there are a lot of things that I'm like, oh, that's cool, but I know I would never make it. Whereas for knitting, there are a lot of things that I could see myself wearing. I think that's style choices. I think that's culture too, that we have a lot of knit items that we can buy store-bought, and so I think I'm just used to that. There's a lot of crochet things that stylistically are not something that I enjoy as much. And the fabric for knitting tends to have more drape, tends to be a thinner fabric, which I think that goes hand in hand with the drape. It's just less bulky and stiff. And so I think for wear, I would prefer to wear knit. So we're kind of split, I guess. A couple points for crochet, a couple points for knitting. And I think that for anyone who does both, then you have pros and cons for both the things you like to do in one craft versus the other. So definitely let me know what you prefer. I don't know if I would prefer crochet over knitting overall. I think that I use those crafts differently. And the more I learn how to knit, the more the distinction between what I enjoy crocheting and what I enjoy knitting will happen. I do not enjoy crocheting this, but that's more of a personal thing. It's not a crochet thing. That's a personal problem. I'm just ready to be done with this project. I want to find more crochet patterns that I enjoy and that I could see myself wearing, if not design them. So we shall see. We shall see what I'll be making later later on this year and in the coming years, but I definitely feel more of a pull to knitting because I'm trying to be more sustainable in my craft, trying to make things that I can see myself wearing and wearing a lot. And currently knitting does that for me. Knitting fits in more with my style and what I enjoy wearing. And living in California right now, it gets really warm, and even in the winter time, there were flowers on the trees in January. We skipped winter. We basically went from fall to spring. It was like in the 50s in the middle of winter. And so I think I've worn my Christmas sweater like 2 days since I made it. Because it's just too warm. It's an air-weight knit sweater. So that's my own fault. But in general, because crochet is thicker, I have a harder time finding wear out of it. So I think that there's a time and a place for both crafts, and I'm grateful that I know both and I can see myself using both in the foreseeable future, but for different things. And I think that's okay. Sorry, just looking at my stitches. So that sounds like an ice cream truck or something. It is summer now. All the kids are out of school. Happy June 1st. Happy Pride Month. Yeah, that's totally an ice cream truck. Yeah. Water break. It's an old school bus that's been converted into an ice cream truck. That's kind of fun. What was I talking about? But yeah, okay. I think there's a time and a place for both crafts, and I see myself using both. I think more knitting than crochet as I'm learning more about knitting, but using both, because both have a place. And then as far as like the weather, I think that's what I was actually talking about. As far as the weather goes, it's warmer here and we don't have as much cool weather, and so bulky things are not gonna work as well. And so I think that just leans more towards knitting, since I can make a thinner fabric with the yarn that I have that way. But there are cool cooling / warm weather crochet makes as well. So not like an end all and be all. So yeah, which craft do you prefer? What do you like crocheting versus knitting? Someone in a comment on a recent video of mine talked about how they would never crochet socks just because the fabric is just not what they're looking for in socks, which is totally fine. I do really like my knit socks. I have one pair of crochet socks, and I would love to see if I can find other crochet socks that I enjoy and even maybe design some, but we shall see. Maybe for me, knit socks will be the way to go, but I want to give crochet socks a fair try. As far as garments, I'm thinking knitting mostly, just because of the drape and the comfort and the style, though I can see myself crocheting a few things still. What other? Home decor, I think crochet all the way. Crochet all the way for home decor. And for like toys and stuff, I think it'll be fun. I just finished a gnome. It's so cute. But I think it would be fun to knit some more toys and things. But I do really like amigurumi and the sturdiness that that style gives to the toys. So probably more crochet than knitting as far as toys go. But I think I may want to make some knit toys too. Are there any other categories I'm missing? I guess like shawls and scarves and things. I don't know. I think it could go either way, because unique stitch patterns for crochet versus knitting. And since it's a single layer of fabric, as long as it's not too bulky, it can still have some good drape. So yeah, I think it could be both. But that's kind of my thoughts on the knitting versus crochet debate, I guess. I think that there's a place for both, and I can see a place for both within my crafting. What do you think? Tell me, which craft do you prefer, and what do you choose to crochet versus knit? I know some people only know one craft or the other. Tell me if you are wanting to learn the other craft. Are you wanting to switch over and become bi-stitchual, as some people say? Or are you completely content in the one craft that you know and love? Let me know down below. I would love to hear from you. One of my favorite parts about this YouTube channel is getting to chat and to get to know all of you more. And so I would love to hear from you in your experience with these two crafts. I chose to crochet today because I feel like I have not been giving crochet enough love on my channel, and I definitely need to work on this project. So I'm sure I'll do some knit and chats as well later on if you guys like this type of content. So let me know if you enjoy having this just little chit chat, like we're friends, just talking away, doing like a virtual crochet or knit night or whatnot. Let me know if you like this type of content, if you want to see more of it from me. I'll show you how far I got. It's from the red marker, so not very far, honestly. It is a light fingering weight yarn, so, and it's a big armhole. So it's going a little slow. So just gotta keep pushing, keep working on it. So anyway, thank you so much for being here for this fun little video that's a little bit different than what I've done before. Let me know if you like this content, and definitely share down below your experience with crocheting versus knitting, what you prefer and what you enjoy, or maybe even dislike. It'd be fun to hear what are hard stops for you for certain crafts, things that you will not do in crochet or in knitting just because it's not worth it and you'd rather do it in the other craft. Let me know down below. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, happy making. Bye.